Well, hello, hello, hello. It's another Friday
Hello. Hello. Yes.
afternoon to you,
Friday.
I guess. Oh my goodness. What a week. What a wonder a week can make. It's good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yes. You as well. I'm doing good. Doing
Good.
good. It's Juneteenth in Texas. I don't know. Do
Mm.
y'all celebrate Juneteenth
Oh,
in
yeah.
Florida?
Juneteenth is big here. And it's also going to
Really?
be tied into Father's Day, if I'm correct, as well.
Oh
So
yeah. Happy early Father's Day.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um, Oh wow! Again, thank you very much for us chatting last week. I've heard a lot of other people who were thankful of the. Oops, sorry, let me mute my phone. Thankful of the transparency and
Mm-hmm.
and sharing and stuff like that, and that was the main thing. If it could help someone, then I've accomplished what I needed to accomplish. But you actually helped me, and she's actually getting some help right now, so that's positive right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Happy to hear that.
yes, indeed. So it's a start. It's
Yes.
it's going somewhere in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
so what about you? What's going on with you?
Well, what is going on with me? That's a good question. I always have to think about it. It's so easy to pinpoint what's going on with other people rather than myself.
Fair enough.
But yeah, well, I guess we could talk about Father's Day. So you have met my dad.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
He probably would cringe if he knew I was talking about him right now. But yeah, so he was here visiting not too long ago. So that was good. Um, Talked to him yesterday. So, but other than that, not much is going on with me. I mean, just really been enjoying myself so far. Looking forward to um, vacation at the end of next month. I have no
Ah,
idea where I'm going, but I am definitely going somewhere.
mm-hmm.
Um, but we were talking about earlier topics to kind of focus on, and so one I guess I would like to talk about is grief. Um, Lots of different types of grief, obviously, um, but I think, especially in this country, grief is and death is something that is very uncomfortable to talk about
Mm-hmm.
and uncomfortable to deal with. And so in counseling, we have this thing called uh, transference and countertransference. And so, of course, anytime I am talking to a client who is like experiencing the loss of a loved one, I mean, I typically think about my mom
Okay.
and and my grandmother, because those were pretty significant losses in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom passed away actually December 7th, 2015.
Mm.
And I was like, really? Like right before Christmas? Like,
Oh,
I mean, of course, we don't get to pick the day or the time, right?
right.
Um, but yeah, and work, like, I think sometimes people in grief, who are experiencing grief or processing grief, they feel like they should be feeling a certain way, or they're not sure what they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I tell people, I said, everybody processes grief differently, you know. Um, and nobody can really tell you how you're supposed to feel.
Right.
But in reflection, when I think about the loss of my mother, I feel like the initial 2 years after my mom passed away, it feels
Mm-hmm.
like I was in the twilight zone, or I was, in a cloud somewhere. Like I was very disconnected from, day to day life. I mean, I was functioning obviously day to day, but um, I just kind of felt a little disconnected from people and situations around me.
Right.
And so actually, I was talking with a client just the other day. And so one of the things that she just lost her mother, and one of the things that she said is, I don't want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And, and I know like most people would probably take that to mean, well, is this person suicidal or,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but, and I know that that can be a thought, but that's not necessarily what it is. It is something that you feel, but it's not really something that you're like, I'm going to do something to myself. It's really the person describing what they're experiencing,
Okay.
what they're going through. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I was able to tell her, well, you know what? That's normal. That's, I mean, the way that you feel, that's normal. It's a normal feeling. And she, confirmed herself that no, I'm not going to do anything to myself, but you know, this is what this feels like right now. Um, but that's one type of grief, but there's other types of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And you know so like the grief of going through a divorce or a separation,
Mm-hmm.
um the grief of letting go of friendship. So there's different, or the grief of leaving a job that you really liked. Like you might be moving on to bigger and better things, but there may be some aspects of that job or that situation that you're grieving because you got to let go of it. you know
Mm-hmm. Right.
and I think you know the biggest thing, or the biggest thought, is that I'm losing something. you know um and so when it
Welcome.
comes oh
Sorry. Go ahead.
so when it comes to thinking about grief, I always explain to clients, like, life is never destroyed. Life never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Life transitions, from one form to another, but it's not something that is destroyed. Um, and so I remember, like, when my mom passed, I felt like more of a passing of the baton. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now, not that I would take on, her purpose or life, or, not that I would take that on, but there are certain things, like, now it's your turn,
Mm-hmm.
to proceed, um, and do certain things and take on different roles and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. You're caught in the matrix. Hold up. What's going on, Lena? Let's give Miss Therapist Tori a second. She's caught in the matrix. It happens. Doggone internet goblins. Well, everyone, just sit back and relax. We will get back on this. Um, No doubt. Tell you the internet's crazy. I tell you what I will do, uh, just so that we keep things moving. It's a little early, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna do the blast artist of the week. Save that question, Miss Lena. She'll be back shortly, and we'll definitely do that. Or question for me, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the blast artist of the week to give Therapist Story some time to come back in. So, the blast artist of the week is Angie Monroe, and this is Where You Are.
Table for two is what she said. As I sat down, had you all in my head. I apologize 1,000 times, please. I even fell to my knees. I called you, but you never showed. I couldn't believe you stood me up. My heart skipped a beat and I cried. Because I love you so much, I wanna be where you are. Where you are. You're the driver, I wanna be the car. If you're the sky, wanna be a star. I'll travel the world, near or far. Wanna be wherever you are. Never knew a love like this before. Got me doing things I never said I would. You were my very first love. I'd move heaven and earth if I could. I wanna be where you are. Where you are. If you're the driver, I wanna be the car. If you're the sky, wanna be a star. I'll travel the world, near or far. Gotta be wherever you are. Don't leave me, I don't know what to do. I've wasted half of my life. You even promised to make me your wife. You're the wind beneath my wings. I'm addicted to your love like a dope fiend. So tell me, where are you, baby? Please, please. 'Cause I wanna be where you are. If you're the driver, I wanna be the car. If you're the sky, wanna be a star. I'll travel the world, near or far. Gotta be wherever you are. You are. Ooh,
Alrighty, that is Angie Monroe, and that is Where You Are. And if you are an independent artist or even an independent comedian that would like to get some exposure, come ahead. Sorry, go ahead and go to blastmusic247.com and you can join as an artist, fill out your genre, and be a part of the community. That's blastmusic247.com. We are changing the industry one artist at a time. What do you think about that song, Miss Tori?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Every single song that I've heard so far on Blast, I love it. So
A
yeah,
lot of people don't
that's amazing.
realize. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there's so much talent in independent music, and we're just trying to give them a platform for their voice to be heard. So, yes, indeed. Now, you got Blast Nation has a term for when someone has internet issues. In this case, where you froze and you got stuck in the matrix. So that's basically what happened. So I went ahead and did the Blast Artist of the Week just so that whatever we can work out.
Oh, that was my internet?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's your internet. I don't know if it's StreamYard. It happens.
Oh, okay. All
But
right.
we're glad you're back. The last thing you were talking about was your mom, and you
Uh-huh.
were saying about, if I'm correct, that you weren't to feel her shoes or her responsibilities, and that's when it kind of froze on us. So,
Well, yeah, so to speak, I was talking about like the grief process and kind of relating it to what I experienced when she passed away,
mhm.
and just feeling like it was like a passing of the baton, like
Right.
basically you carry on, like you don't stop. Your life doesn't stop, because I'm not here in the physical realm, so.
Correct. I got you. Um, Miss Lena, you can give that question if that was for me or if it was for therapist Tori, but thank you for being here. Um, so everyone is going to experience grief, some form or fashion in their life. That's
Mhm,
like inevitability, it seems like. Um,
mhm.
how to deal with it is the main thing. And I know we were speaking about the, I can never remember the full acronym, but the LGBTQ. Um, that,
LGBTQIA.
okay.
I think that's all the letter. It's the whole alphabet. But
Yeah,
anyway,
pretty
go
much.
ahead.
I will answer that question in a second, Miss Lena. We've been hearing that people from the LGP, so on and such, have
Just
have a lot of them have been dealing with
yeah,
heavy stress of grief,
yeah.
and some have been taking their lives, and so on.
Mhm.
And one of the questions is more or less, how does someone with such a heavy burden of grief can find relief? What would you suggest?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's definitely something that needs to be processed. And I think that you have to allow yourself to go through all the phases.
Hmm.
And if someone were to look it up online, I think it's Kubler-Ross stages of grief. Um, and I know it's anger, bargaining. Um, I can't remember all the stages off the top of my head. It's not very many, but anger and bargaining, and acceptance. Those are so. Oh, I think depression is part of it.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like I'm missing one, but anger, depression, bargaining, and I
Just
know
out of assumption, is it
uh
denial?
it could be denial. That might be the one I'm missing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that we have to allow ourselves to go through it. And it's just remembering that you're going through it. Like
Hmm.
what you feel in the initial stages of grief, it, it feels pretty intense. And
Hmm.
it feels like something that it feels like a feeling that will never go away. But
Mm.
it does go away. It takes time. And it may even take, going to talk to a therapist or participate in a group. Um, but you got to talk through it. You have to talk through it. Um, Sometimes people avoid dealing with grief by focusing on work or just finding something, or they start abusing drugs or alcohol as a distraction.
Hmm.
um but it's just something that you have to allow yourself to feel, um because they're really, I mean, there really is no way to get around it. You can avoid dealing with grief, but at some point or another, it's going to crop back up. It's like a weed, it's gonna
Right.
come back up. So,
Okay.
uh, but
Well,
yeah, was there a specific question related to LGBTQ?
no, it was. I remember we just had a discussion regarding. There were members of it that had, such great stress as far where they're
Mhm,
hurting themselves and taking their lives. It's just like, how does someone get some help during those times of challenge and
mhm.
stress? That was basically it. Miss Lena asked a question: how do you discuss the loss of a loved one with an underage kid?
Well, I think pretty similar as to how you would talk to an adult. I mean, the stage of grief that I was talking about, kids experience that too. And
Okay.
kids, depending on the age, sometimes internalize a lot of their feelings, especially, between the ages of like 5 to 10 years old. That age group in particular, kids internalize a lot of their grief, or they somehow think that they're responsible for something that has happened.
Hmm.
So I think, you would talk to a child similar as talking to an adult, and by asking them, how do you feel? And letting them know it's okay to feel, and it's okay to feel sad. You know, um, I think that as a child, a lot of my grief work was stunted because, and I'm not in any way blaming my parents, but they didn't tell me. Like
Mm.
when my grandfather died, I heard my dad crying and kind of hitting his fist on the wall. I knew what happened,
Hmm.
like internally, I knew what happened, but it was weeks later before my parents told me what really happened. Like they didn't say, "Hey, your grandfather just passed away," and but I needed to process that. So maybe like I can't remember if it was months later or the following year. You know, we would always, me and my younger brother, we would always spend the summers with my grandmother. So when I went to visit my grandmother, I'm literally walking around the house looking for my grandfather. So
Wow.
like, kids don't always understand the permanence of death,
Right.
you know. So I think it's just education and explanation, you know. And so I didn't grieve until I went and I saw, oh, he's really not here, you know.
Hmm.
And some I think some parents keep their children from going to funerals because they feel like it's too much.
Right.
It's too much emotion for them to experience. But and I'm not trying to tell people how to raise their kids. I mean, that's not my job. But I would suggest that, to allow kids to attend funerals, because they need a place of safety and security to be able to process their grief. I mean, they grieve just like adults grieve,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
sometimes we kind of disregard that when it comes to children,
Right. Right.
because again, a child may not express negative feelings or negative emotions in the same way as an adult,
Hmm. Right.
but letting them know that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel that, of course, you don't want them to feel that forever, but,
Correct.
you know, letting them know it's okay to process that grief and to feel those feelings.
Understood. We have a question here from Aaron Brown, and he was
Okay.
saying that he's grieving now over the passing of his father, and it's affecting my everyday life. I was diagnosed with high anxiety, and medicine has been prescribed. Is there a way to control my anxiety without medicine?
Um, well, I mean, that's a good question. And obviously, sorry for your loss. I mean, I know losing a parent, I mean, there's just no, there's no feeling to describe that. But yeah, I guess my biggest suggestion would be journaling, um, going to therapy, or participating in a grief group where you're able to talk to other people who are also experiencing grief. Um, Giving yourself time and space. If you need to take off, you know, I mean, if you need to go do something that you enjoy doing, then by any means, go do that.
Mhm.
Um, Working out, like, that gets endorphins flowing, and to help with how you're feeling, and low serotonin levels. But yeah, I mean, that's other than that, it's just letting yourself feel, and understanding, that you are going to have moments where, something will pop into your head, or, you know, and unapologetically, there's nobody that you need to apologize to. Like, some
Right.
people are uncomfortable with negative emotions, and, don't want to deal with it. I know when my mom passed, was talking to certain friends and whatnot, and explaining to them what I was going through in terms of depression, and they just kind of look at me like, okay, not sure what you want me to do. Um, so a lot of times we don't know how to deal with somebody that's grieving,
Mhm.
because sometimes you're just like, oh, I just want you to just get over it. Just be okay. And, sometimes you have to say, well, I'm not okay, and I don't have to be okay right now. I will be okay. But, if you're feeling what you feel, then you feel that. And you don't have to apologize to anybody for feeling those feelings. So, and of course, I'm not advocating for depression or advocating for anybody to stay in a low place, because, you know, one of the things that was a positive thing for me to reflect on is, like, realizing that the person, the entity who my mother is, will always be. And if I were actually, sitting down having a conversation with her, what would she say to me? And what would she want for me? You know, Realizing, well, I know my mom wouldn't want me to be in this place of depression and not wanting to move on with life because she's not here. You know, I mean, there's been too much of a deposit, and too much of an investment of her life into me for me to say, well, now I don't want to go on.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
that's not that's not what she put in me. So even though I feel that emotion, I'm not going to allow that to overtake me, because if I'm recognizing the investment, then I'm not going to let myself go to that dark place. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. Now, Miss Lena has a statement she wanted to share.
Okay.
I lost my father in 2019, and I'm currently dealing with my mother in hospice right now. The hardest part for me is dealing with accepting that God may be calling her home, my last parent, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's her challenge. And she also did
Mm-hmm.
agree with what you said about with the kids and funerals.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Miss Lena, go ahead with your question whenever you have it. Yeah. Uh, as a parent, the painful stuff we want to keep for my kids, even the situation of when you have to take them to the doctor to get shots, if you are open to immunization. Those are things that it sucks, but it's for the betterment of them. And I guess in a certain degree, we got to kind of treat grief like that, because the more you hide grief from them, to me, the greater the shock will be when there
Mm-hmm.
is a time they have to go through it. All right,
Right.
so she says, therapist Tori, how do you tell someone that their lack of empathy is hurtful?
Mm-hmm.
Should we avoid people who are reckless or brutally candid with our grief, or confront them?
Mm. How do you tell someone their lack of empathy is hurtful? Well, that's a good question. And should they be avoided? So I'll just share with you, I work with couples quite a bit. And so one of the things that we talk about in terms of communication is empathy. So when we look at imago therapy that was developed by John Gottman, and we look at couples dialogue, there's mirroring, validation, and empathy. And so now, so there's one part of this where you would say, because I think when conflict comes into play, that we have, we meaning human beings, we have a tendency to make accusations or even character assessments or negative character assessments. And so, in some of our background when it comes to conflict are things that we get from, our parents or whatever environment we grew up in, right? Um, so the natural tendency, sometimes and I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but sometimes the natural tendency is to attack
Mm-hmm.
or and then of course when you're attacking, then the other person is going to be defensive. They're going to defend themselves. So I think it's perfectly fine to share with somebody how you're feeling. It's just the way in which you do it. So if I feel like I'm not getting empathy in a certain situation, then that would be like, okay, well, and I'm just going to make up something right now. So when you came home yesterday and you didn't give me a kiss like you normally do, then I felt disregarded or I felt ignored. Okay. So that sounds a lot different than, you're a jerk. you know, you're really a jerk. And I can't believe you're acting like this. So sometimes, we go on the attack rather than, making I statements and saying, this is how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's two different approaches. Now, so so she was saying, why didn't you let somebody know? Well, it's just make those I statements. This is how I feel in certain situations, or this is how I felt when this happened. and making it clear, like, I'm not making any character assessments about you. I'm not calling you a jerk or an asshole, no, because if that's how I start, then that might be the response that I trigger as well. So, it's just kind of being conscious of how things are stated. Now, so I think that was the first part of her question, but what was the second part?
The second part is, should we avoid people who are reckless and brutally candid with our grief, or confront them?
Avoid people that are reckless. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're in a situation, whether it's I would say whether it's a romantic partner or a friend or a family member, and you've been in this situation where you're constantly like trying to address something that's happening in that relationship, and they're not receptive to it, or they don't want to hear it, or they, then I think we would have to say, okay, is this healthy? Is this a healthy relationship, or is it not healthy? Do I feel like this relationship is damaging to me? And if so, yeah, I would. And you've actually tried, and you've communicated, and you've let this person know how you feel, and there's still no positive feedback from that, then yeah, I would say, you might have to make a decision to exit.
Right.
Or make a decision to love them from afar. Like, right now, this isn't healthy for either one of us. And consequently, I'm gonna take some space right now. And, maybe there's a possibility we can bring this back together later on. But right now, I feel like this is not healthy for me. And, take it from there. So, but I mean, I guess I would avoid, the categorizing, someone as being reckless. I mean, it may, interacting with them may feel like that. But I feel like, again, if I'm coming with an accusation or a label, then I'm gonna, I might get some defensiveness in return. So, does that make sense?
I understand where you're coming from. She did say the I statement works for her, so she did thank you for that. I'm sure she's processing the second part of the statement. Awesome. Mm-hmm. If you guys have any more questions, you're more than free to ask them. Now, I did not lose my mom, but because of her being in a manic state, it is definitely like you're dealing with someone you've never met before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that was grief as much as it was frustration. It's been...
Well, I mean, it might be some grief in that too. I mean, when you think about people who have aging parents and they start going through dementia, and they no longer know who you are when you come to them.
Yeah.
Or they're calling you somebody else's name, or they try to fight or become aggressive. I mean, there is some grief levels to that, because
Agreed.
that means that I have to let go of the person that I knew. Because you're no longer, that person is no longer the same. They've changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And so even though their physical body and presence is here, their personality has changed in a lot of ways.
Right.
So yeah, I would say there's definitely, some grief attached to that.
I
So,
got you. Yeah, I don't know. It's like June has actually became the emotional month because it's just been a roller coaster ride of just all kind of emotions, So I get it.
mhm.
I get it. Um, hmm. So yeah. All right. So anyone else has anything they'd like to share? Definitely let us hear it. What about you? Grieving period. Is it something that you have to say in your mind, okay, that's enough? Or do you have to kind of, how
Mhm.
do you gauge the when to grieve, when not to grieve?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a prescription of time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just to share a little bit of my own story. Um, like I said, I feel like the bulk of the grieving for me was like that 2 years, you know, after my mom passed. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I realized like I wasn't present a lot of the time.
Uh-huh.
I I just felt clocked out, even when I went and spent time or hung out with friends, I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like I wasn't there.
Gotcha.
And sometimes I even left. Like I left, I was like, I'm gonna holler at y'all. Or sometimes I said that and didn't say anything, I just left.
Wow. You just
And
bounced.
they would be
Okay.
like, what the hell? Like, what is? And I was like, I'm sorry. I just had to go, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so and so there was like a period where I felt like I wasn't getting better, like, and then of course what I do, being a therapist, I mean, I'm able to kind of put myself or my feelings and emotions in a box because I have to deal with other people's stuff, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what would happen when I would leave, the office in the evening, that's when I cried. It was like either on the way to work or on the way home. That would be my time to grieve. Um, so I realized like, okay, Victoria, you can't continue like this. Like you have to deal with your grief. You got to deal with it. You can't keep avoiding it. So, I started going back to therapy, and that helped a lot. I mean, that helped a lot. And that kind of helped me to come out of, the space that I was in. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
and other than that, just realizing and thinking about some of the conversations that I had with my mother, and, understanding like on a different level, okay, and I know my mom would say to me, you know what, I had my life. I lived my life. I enjoyed my life. What you crying for? Like, live your life
Mm-hmm.
and do the things that you want to do and
Mm-hmm.
move forward, go forward. Like, I don't want you sitting up here, you know, crying about me forever. Like, yeah, I miss you too. But understand that life goes on. Understand, like, I mean, I'm never going to forget my mom. My mom, I mean, she's still with me. She's
Right.
still with me right
Mm-hmm.
here, right now. She is still with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I feel that presence, you know. So
That's
I'm not without her,
mm-hmm.
so it's just recognizing and kind of, you know, absorbing that, you know, that and understanding that life is not destroyed. It we don't know what's beyond this life. And it's not meant for us to know that right now. But there is something beyond this life.
Amen.
I believe that.
I do.
Definitely.
I do too. So Miss Lena says, abundant life query. Thoughts on grieving a long-term relationship. Is it unhealthy to still connect with a romantic partner after love is gone? Q E W F intro.
Well, if we reference divorce, I mean, there's a great amount of grieving that is associated with divorce because you are basically letting go of the dreams and aspirations that you had connected to that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I would definitely say that I still love my ex-spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. I mean, love, just like life, is something that is not destroyed. I mean, if you truly love somebody, that love does not go away. So now, again, it might transform. It's not, I'm not in love. I don't have romantic feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but to acknowledge him as a person, yes, I would say I love him. I want the best for him. I want him to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
and just like we're saying, living the abundant life, I would want that for him too. So, there's no, it's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that, and acknowledging any, that love emotion, even if it's a love relationship that is over, or at least the romantic part of that relationship is over,
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. And matter of fact, I mean, if I were to meet someone and they start telling me, how they suck and, something wrong with them and they crazy, and I'm gonna be like, okay. Like, so what's going on with you? Are you still in love with this person? Like, what's up? Because, and you meet people like that, you meet people like that who they want to sit up and badmouth their baby mama, their baby daddy, or, or their ex-spouse or ex-partner. And it's like, no, red flag, you ain't over it. You're not over it.
Right.
So.
Oh boy. So Miss Lady Bless said, my question is, should you put a time frame on how long to grieve or be depression? Do you feel it's something that we can control?
I don't think it's something that we can necessarily control. And that's a good question. It's, allowing yourself, just like we kind of talked about earlier, allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to grieve, and not telling yourself that you need to be over it, and not allowing anybody else to tell you just get over it, because that's unrealistic. And you don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, and grief is a weird thing because it's not, like we talk about the stages of grief, but it's not a linear process. I mean, one day you can be in a place of acceptance, and the next day you might be angry, because you wish they were still here, or something was triggered in your mind and it made you think about something, so sometimes it's just, you don't know what you're going to feel. I mean, my grandmother passed when I was 12 years old. I'll never forget it, because I mean, that was my heart. Like, I love me some Elizabeth Dorsey. I mean, love. I mean, couldn't wait to see her. I still miss her,
Mm.
and I still miss her. I still think about her. I mean, those memories are like it was literally yesterday.
Wow.
So yeah, there is no particular time frame. Now, I think that if we find ourselves in this consistent state of depression where we're not really functioning, or we're not really, it's been some time and we're still not really enjoying our life, or, it just feels like we're stuck in a vat of molasses, then I would say at that point, yes, we need to go talk to somebody. And because sometimes just dealing with it internally is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need to tell the story. I mean, African Americans, we're very much a narrative culture. And so sometimes we just need to hear ourselves tell the story. What are those stories, with those loved ones? Tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
Repeat those stories over and over again, because that helps us to remember all the good parts,
Mm.
and it also helps us to realize that in a lot of ways, our loved ones are still here with us, and
Yeah.
we still feel their presence from time to time. So
It's like a perspective. Mm.
mhm.
Okay. Well, we actually have, it's about like less than 8 minutes um, towards the end of the show, but we are going to cut it a little short only because we have a special podcast that's coming up at the top of the hour. And we've been kind of chopping at the bit for this podcast. So please forgive us that we do cut this short so that we can go to there. I will read Miss Lena's last part and
Okay.
then we'll close up. She said, "Real talk. I appreciate you keeping it real. I will always care about both my ex and my first love, but we can't be, but I will love him afar."
Yeah.
So I
Amen.
I feel you.
Get ready for the new boo thing.
All right. So guys, first and foremost, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, go ahead and subscribe to our channel so that every episode of Living the Abundant Life and all the other wonderful podcasts through Blast Media will be accessible to you. Right now, we are leaving early because we have a new podcast that we're starting with Tori, myself, and another amazing lady, which is Miss Lady that just texted. And we're going to have some fun, y'all. And we would love for y'all to be a part of it. Now, let's just make the disclaimer that if you're sensitive, don't come because we're trying to
Right.
cut up. Just saying. So, look, guys, we thank you for everything. You guys have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Next week. Bye.